Today's deep dive looks at the resurgence of play-to-win competitions like the Beast Games, and if it's time to consider them sports or just reality TV. But before the deep dive, our quick five. Number one, Trump's sports curse continues. USA hockey fell to Canada 3-2 in overtime during the foreign nations face-off championship. Number two, a new Olympic Netflix docuseries underscores the heated competitiveness of playing for one's country. Three, Trump continues to insert himself into sports meeting with Tiger Woods about a potential merger between PGA and LIV. Four, we're going to look at this push to ban the Tush push. Five, the Yankees are changing things up after nearly 50 years, allowing players to don facial hair. I'm Jason Kander. I'm joined by Ravi Gupta and Adisu Demisi. Welcome back to The Game Within, where we talk about the business and politics of sports and how each shapes what happens on the field.
All right. Well, we were texting during this. I had on one screen the hockey match and then the other the Court of Gold docuseries, which we'll talk about in a second. But Adisu, you were born in Canada and you live in the great country of the United States of America. Where were your allegiances here? Because I actually am an American, and I was torn based on the optics of this.
I am an American, first of all. I like to say Canadian by birth, American by choice. Thank you very much. I was torn too. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I said this a couple shows ago. Hockey's a religion in Canada, and I moved to the United States when I was 11. I'm still a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. I grew up in Toronto. Never really lost that allegiance. We are kindred souls because you're a Bills fan, so you understand what it's like to be a Leafs fan. And yeah, like I said, I grew up sort of with hockey as my number one sport. It's been eclipsed by the Warriors and basketball since I moved out west. But I was a little torn. I also just was so happy to see a game that felt so consequential. Even and so did the players.
That was exciting for you.
It's true. Hey, they make the playoffs every year.
I don't even know that much about hockey, but I know
they just bomb every year.
Yeah,
but it was interesting, honestly, to see as a Democrat, as somebody who is, whatever my politics are, and understanding how Trump has been trolling Canada. My historical allegiance to Canada has its backup a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. By the same token, I'm an American. I want America to win. Just like, we're going to talk about next segment about the Court of Gold in the Olympics. I mean, I was full-throatedly behind, every United States Olympian just last year in the Olympics. So it was, I was torn too. But what a great exhibition. What a great game. What a great way to show that, you don't have to be playing for money to play for something. I was flipping between, I think it was the first night basketball was back after the All-Star break. And I'm a huge basketball fan. Like I said, my number one sport now. And about halfway through maybe the first period, I basically just switched to hockey, and I watch hockey for the rest of the time. And that is not what most Americans do, even formerly Canadian Americans.
Jason, you can't take our country and you can't take our game. That's what Justin Trudeau tweeted out after the win.
Yeah. Isn't it funny how the coarseness of American politics is invading and just making everything else coarse? Because can you imagine, let's say the election had gone the other way. Can you imagine a scenario in which Justin Trudeau is tweeting out smack talk at America with President Harris? I'm not saying that's even a comment on what's good or bad. It's just a fact that it's just because American popular culture dominates the world. When American popular culture becomes dominated by politics, and that politics becomes dominated by a coarseness, the entire world gets more coarse and there's less decorum.
Yeah, and I feel weird. I almost didn't say I was conflicted on this because I'm American. I'm unlike Adisu. I have no reason to root for Canada other than the fact that we've been absolutely obnoxious as a country to Canada over the past few months. And I just genuinely felt bad. And I think what pushed me over the top was the coach of the USA hockey team, Bill Guerin, or the general manager, who told Fox News that he would love it if Trump was in attendance, which we talked about how the office of the president, and sometimes it's not a statement of your politics. But I think given everything that Trump has said about Canada, requesting that Trump be in attendance, and also given how hot everything has been on the ice between Canada and the US. That's an incendiary act, in my opinion, and makes it really hard for me to get behind you. I also have no idea who any of the players are. So if you told me, like, okay, like Crosby, he's Canadian or American, I'd be like, I don't know. Like, so it's like I have no allegiance here whatsoever.
Another reason to let Canada have this one, right?
Yeah.
Like they know,
Whoever they are,
these
whoever
guys
they are, good for them.
since they were 5 years old. But yeah, the Guerin thing, I agree that it's not that, the president injected politics into this, like this is not one of those things where it happened and people are just mad at Trump or whoever the president is. Like he trolled before the game. We'll see the I was going to say tweet, whatever the hell it's called now, the truth up on the here. He was actively trolling about making Canada the 51st state hours before the game started. So yeah, Bill Guerin, come on, man. You're trying to create an international incident at that point by inviting the president. And it was, I had a long debate with some of my friends over text about that tweet. I'm going to call it a tweet.
You just call it a tweet.
Okay, it's a tweet. About whether he was trolling. Like that would have been a fun, good-natured tweet without all the shit that happened in the past. Like that was actually kind of funny, right? It's like it was, but understanding he's not doing it to be funny. He's doing it to be mean. And it just shows that, it makes it easy to have his presence and his involvement just be mean-spirited as opposed to good-natured rivalry competition.
There's a real potential backfire to this kind of thing. We've talked about this a lot, not on the show, just in general, about when politicians decide to insert themselves into sports. It seems to mostly work out for Trump because Trump comes from a place of popular culture that is, frankly, thanks to The Apprentice and, the 80s, he's just bigger than most, and pretty much everything but the Super Bowl, maybe the World Series. He's just bigger than just about everything else. So he can do that. But when you look at other politicians like, I consider him a friend. Y'all probably know him too, because I think I met him originally at Arena, Ravi, is Aftab Puraval.
Yeah.
And what happened for him when he, as mayor of Cincinnati, he made the Burrowhead joke when the Bengals came here, and then the Bengals lost.
What was the joke? I vaguely remember this.
He did like a resolution saying that there needed to be a paternity test to prove that Joe Burrow was Patrick Mahomes' father.
Oh, he gave bulletin board material.
Yeah, bulletin board material. And then the Chiefs won, and then Kelsey, called him a jabroni, whatever that is, and told him to know his place. And it was, I think, without divulging any confidence, I think it was concerning politically for his camp. And it's all resolved now and it's fine. But, or I remember when the Royals were playing the Astros in the playoffs back in 2015, and I think it was the governor, was Abbott of Texas, tweeted out like in the 8th inning about how excited he was that the Astros were moving on, and then the Royals came back and won, and everybody blamed him and said he jinxed them. So it can be a high wire act. In this case, it doesn't seem like that's going to affect Trump, but.
Well, let's talk about story number 2 here, which is this Court of Gold documentary series, 6-part series on Netflix. And I've got to say, this is one of the best sports docuseries I've ever seen. Definitely probably the best one since The Last Dance. And actually the guy who created it was part of that team. And the production company is the same production company from Jason Hare from The Last Dance. I know, DC, you're saying you watched a couple episodes. Jason, you still got to see it. I have a lot of takeaways from this thing. I think, and you've only saw the first 2 episodes, so maybe we'll start with the Obama interaction. So Obama, you've seen this, right, Adisu?
Yeah,
that's
it was in
the
episode
first
1.
2 episodes. Yeah. Obama gives a speech to the players as they're preparing in Vegas, and he's also an executive producer of the documentary. And I don't know if you kind of caught some of the interactions there. I found it really interesting to see just how he gets who he gets along with and not, and how he interacts with the players.
Yeah, it was first of all, it was hilarious how in the interview after sorry, no spoilers, but in the interview after
we kind of
USA wins exactly. USA wins the gold, guys. But in the interview after they did the docu shot of him interacting with the players, he was like, no, it actually would be embarrassing if we lost the silver. And he seemed, if we won the silver, and he actually seemed serious about that.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell from the documentary if that interview happened before the Olympics or after the Olympics, but it
felt like before. The way that he was framing it, unless he tried to make it like or because he's the executive producer.
People do.
Yeah, and if he's the executive producer, he could probably be like, take
just
this.
Looking at the list of producers, I know one of these guys. Maybe we could get Connor Shell.
Yeah, we should
on here. I'll reach out to him.
Yeah, tell him to come out.
But
or if you can get the
it's pretty clear that he first of all knows the old heads well. You could tell that like he actually feels like a kinship with LeBron and the older players. And he was almost amused at Anthony Edwards, I love the man.
He doesn't lack in self-confidence.
He is the most arrogant person, but he does it with with a smile on his face. In front of the former president, he had no qualms about basically telling Barack Obama where he could shove it within what looked like their first interaction. So it was the whole documentary. I mean, again, I've seen a third of it, but it just shows the difference between that and the starting five we talked about last week versus the Formula One. It all depends on how real the people are being. And KD and Anthony Edwards in particular in those first two episodes just seem like they're being themselves. And it doesn't matter almost what they do or what they say. You really feel like you're getting a BTS view of things. That's all that matters.
Well, here's what you're going to see when you watch the rest of these. The players, especially the non-USA players, care more about these games than they do the NBA games. It is without a doubt. When you see them lose these games, they're distraught. And when you see them win, like when Serbia won the bronze, they drank for 48 hours straight. The Serbians, I would say, are the number one most interesting group of players in this entire docuseries by far. They basically beat the U.S. Like that game was crazy.
So they don't just follow the U.S.
No,
okay.
They follow the U.S., France, Canada
and
and
the
Serbia.
top four finishers. Yeah.
And if you remember, Jason, like the U.S. in the semifinals barely beat Serbia.
Mm-hmm.
Serbia was up big time in that game. The U.S. had to come back in that game. Reliving that was amazing. And it's one of those things where, like, unlike the hockey, I'm like obviously rooting for the U.S., but when you're watching this, you're like, oh my God, like this would mean the world to any of these players. And then in Canada, the France game, which I think I texted you, Jason, when it was going on, saying you got to watch this as it was happening.
I did watch it. I remember, yeah.
And that was obviously Steph Curry 4 threes in a row.
Yeah.
That crazy.
That was the go to sleep thing, and which kids on my son's team now do. Which, I mean, I know Curry was doing it before that, but that's where it really mainstreamed. And like, now 11-year-olds are like, they're making like a layup and then being like, go to sleep. And it's like, dude, it's the second quarter.
It's really easy to imagine the U.S. losing next time around based on what you saw on the screen in this, which is like with no Steph Curry, no Kevin Durant, and no LeBron James. Then you got Wembanyama coming up, and then you still got Jokic. I always forget. He'll still be around, so and Canada, this is an interesting stat. There are as many NBA players on Team Canada than there were in the entire Olympics outside of the US in 92. So the US in 92, Dream Team and all of that weren't playing, the quality of players that people are playing now. Like every team, the US
the game wasn't as big in the other countries then. I mean, this is the result of globalizing the game, right? I mean, it's now they're really good in all these other places. They have real programs. They're, the key doesn't always look weird. It's not always shaped weird. The rules aren't always straight. You know what I mean? Like,
and I don't think they did this on purpose, but I couldn't agree with you more, Ravi. We are not going to, I'll predict the U.S. is not going to win the gold medal in Los Angeles. I just think the world is going to catch up, and our players,
which will be
exactly, or will be an underdog. And it's interesting that it really is like a bookend from 92 in Barcelona to 2024 in Paris. It feels like, and I think we'll look back on this documentary again. I'm almost afraid to watch the last 4 episodes because I want it. It was the same way I felt about The Last Dance during the pandemic. I really wanted to like keep going, but it feels like in retrospect, we'll look back on 24 and on this documentary potentially as like the last chapter of a 30-year story about the internationalization of basketball.
Well, the story
the
is
end of the
story.
United States dominance.
Well, the story is the same one, right? The U.S. players inspired the world. You interview these people. They interview people like Nowitzki and Steve Nash and all these people who point directly to the '92 Olympics as what inspired them to play. And somebody said this in the documentary, the U.S. dominated the world in '92, and then they fended them off successfully in this one. And that's probably the end of the story of the U.S. domination. From here on out, we'll win Olympics without a doubt, but we just won't win all or most of them from now on. That's probably the reality we live in.
It also, combining this with the previous segment and a little bit with the next one, it is hard to come up with stakes that are bigger than international play in any sport. I mean, at the end, like that's like I think I mentioned last week that we went to the World Baseball Classic, and we were, the thing ended with Mike Trout versus Shohei Ohtani in a 1-run game. I mean, it was incredible. And, those two because Ohtani was just about to leave the Angels and go to the Dodgers. They'd never faced each other. It was, or I guess it was maybe the season right before that, but so they were still teammates at that point. And it was, just incredible. Right. And it was because of the international nature of it, and after that, honestly, watching the rest of that regular, I'm a huge baseball fan, but watching that regular season after going to the World Baseball Classic, it all felt like a little bit of a letdown, like watching the Phillies in the playoffs was exciting, except that I had seen Trey Turner be a monster hero during the World Baseball Classic like 5 months earlier. And it all just felt, I don't know. It just didn't hit me the same way. There is
I really
something
wonder if there was a
country.
hangover effect for the players. I even think about the NHL players who are coming back. Like the Leafs played yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, 2 days after that game, and Austin Matthews, who had, captained the US team, like what would to go back to like a Leafs Panthers game,
Right.
after playing this intense game with the president and the prime minister, or a gold medal on the line and Curry making that shot. Like he had to come back to training camp for the Warriors and just be like, have to work into it, over the course of the season.
What's crazy is
to play for this city now, not the whole country. It's just
some of these guys have been playing since they were children with each other. And so like, they go to the France team actually went back to the facilities that they trained in as kids. And that's where they stayed there in the Olympics as a way to like kind of bring back that camaraderie. And it reminded me a lot of like, when it's something like when the Bills play the Chiefs, it's like you're watching these teams and at a certain point they care so like you win enough, the other teams care so much more about each game. And you're watching these Serbians and the French and they're like devastated after each loss. And yeah, America was happy, like without a doubt. Like the players like LeBron and Kevin Durant and Curry especially were energetic and happy in a way that you don't see it in any games in the NBA. And Durant especially, and this gets to a conversation we've been having for a while, which is we never threw Durant in the authenticity bucket, but it reminded me that Durant is pretty candid, and he's the star of the documentary. And you'll see even more, Adisu, as you go on. He cries when he's talking about how much he loves the game of basketball and how much he loves the Olympics. He's the leading scorer in Olympic history. And you could just tell that, like, he gets up for these games, like it matters a ton to him.
Well, what part of it has got to be is that, okay, like let's take this last Super Bowl, right? Chiefs Eagles. Like, there are players on the Chiefs who are at this point very much of Kansas City, right? Because they've been here a while and they've made their home here and they're super part of the community. And I know that's true for Philadelphia too. Mahomes, Kelsey, people like that. But other than that, most of the players on the field, Jalen Hurts, I'm sure, is like super part of Philadelphia. Saquon Barkley, having gone to Penn, like it feels like he came home. There's that kind of stuff. But for everybody else, they're playing for the other players, right? And today they're wearing green. Next season they might be wearing red, whatever. it's really international play is the only place where you can watch everybody on the court, everybody on the field is playing for the place that they're from. And that, I think, is the thing that gets it closest to, like high school basketball or high school football, that pride in the place that you're from. Now, we as fans feel it, like when I'm watching the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, they're the Kansas City team, right? But the players don't know, like how many of the players on the Chiefs have more than one favorite restaurant in town? Like some of them have only been at, they're like practicing and then they're not here in the off season.
And you know what? I don't want to take this too far afield. I know we got to get to the next topic, but this is actually why this is the downside of NIL in college sports too, which I feel like, people like us and of men of a certain age who've been watching college basketball or college football since we were kids remember 4-year starters and the team, like even the Duke teams that I hated in the early 90s, like they were the same players for 4 years. And now it just feels it's not just, I want the players to get paid, et cetera, but like Cam Ward on Miami last year, I don't even remember. Jalen Daniels, does he belong to Arizona State or LSU? It doesn't have that same, they don't have the same allegiance to college, to their universities that they used to. And in some ways it feels exactly the same in college sports as it does in the NFL. Whereas it used to be, that was actually the distinguishing factor. College sports felt more like international competition, and now it feels more like professional sports. So I couldn't agree more that you're not just, it's why teams like the Spurs and the Warriors, my favorite team, like feel different. Or even the Chiefs to some extent, because you have a team that's stuck together for a decade.
Yeah, that's
15
true.
years, and they actually do have an allegiance to Kansas City or San Antonio or San Francisco Bay Area. But there's nothing like international competition. And now after watching both the Four Nations and the first couple episodes of the doc, I'm all in on making the NBA All-Star Game a U.S. versus world thing, because for all the reasons you said, Jason.
I think the docuseries is going to inspire that. Well, let's go to our next story, which we've talked about, and I've said multiple times on this pod already, that you can't have two sports within a sport. One dynamic that seems to be testing this is this PGA golf versus LIV golf standoff that's been going on, and I don't really claim to fully understand everything that's going on, but Tiger Woods, for some reason, got the congressional medal or the presidential medal of honor or whatever in the White House, and through this, Trump weighed in and seems to be playing some kind of role to broker whatever kind of deal. And this is happening alongside the fact that the LIV golf, backed by the Saudis, is flush with cash and has picked off a lot of PGA Tour players who appear to be doing both PGA and LIV, but the ratings on PGA are still much higher than LIV. And so this is touching off speculation as to what's going to happen here. The Saudis obviously have a ton of cash. And the question is, like, where do we go from here? Do the Saudis just buy the PGA Tour? And how much different is that than, say, the fact that, like, so many of these European soccer teams are owned by golf billionaires? Like, what's the difference really here? And like, I wouldn't say I love the country of Saudi Arabia, but what's the dividing line between owning a whole league versus owning assets within a league,
I remember part of the controversy before, and we got a couple of clips to look at, but part of the controversy before was that LIV Golf was, during the first Trump presidency, LIV Golf was also paying a lot of money to Trump, properties to put on tournaments. And then at the same time, dealing with the Trump administration over all sorts of different stuff. So there's a couple of clips. Philip, go ahead and play whichever one you think is most appropriate here.
Is this even vaguely good for fans of golf? The answer has been no. LIV Golf as a product is not a good product. It's not popular. People don't enjoy it. It broke apart this thing that people love, golf.
Yeah, the PGA, yeah.
Right? And so, look, in that description, I think you can see a bit of the metaphor for the country at large. It's a case study in corruption that benefits nobody but the people who are in that room negotiating this merger.
Is there any sport that you think could withstand the pressure and the money?
So we're testing that now, because currently in the NFL and the NBA, they are welcoming, they're testing the waters by selling minority stakes of their teams to private investment funds. And so we've seen the Middle East come in to the most American institutions left, right? Nicole, we say this all the time in sports. The lone monoculture we have is football, is American sports. Yeah. And right now we're actively testing, do people really care if we sell piece by piece in a way that is not subtle, if we sell this stuff to foreign powers that are not, at least once upon a time, they weren't allies to the American interest.
So that's our buddy Pablo Torre. I don't know if y'all know him. I've done his show. I really like Pablo. I think his show is great. I think at the end of the day, doesn't it really just come down to whether it's a watchable product, regardless of who's backing it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like those private equity bought a piece of the Bills, and I had mixed feelings about it. And I wrote a piece once for the Brooklyn Daily Eagle about foreign ownership of the Brooklyn Nets, and it was from the Prokhorov to Joseph Tsai, which Joseph Tsai is not like. It depends on how you look at him, but he certainly seems to, like, based on his business interests, have a lot of positive things to say about the country of China, and the NBA in general seems to have a problem with free speech when it comes to criticizing that country, which we don't have to go into today. But I basically just wrote that, like, hey, like, the idea that the Brooklyn Dodgers would have been owned by foreign interests is something that would have been untenable. Yet we had a Russian oligarch followed by a tech billionaire who had a lot of interests that required him to be very steady with some foreign adversaries. To me, made me deeply uncomfortable. And so, yeah. And I kind of wrote about how it was, like, keeping with a lot of other policies that we have in real estate in New York that are bad policies. And yeah, so I'm not into this at all. I want our own kleptocrats locally.
You know why it's happening, right? You know why it's not. I mean, Pablo is somewhat right. He talks about just the power of money, but a lot of it is these assets they're becoming worth more and more all the time. And at some point, believe it or not, it's hard to believe the way, wealth inequality works in this country. At some point, these assets become so large that there just aren't that many American families that can actually afford to own a full majority share. I mean, there are, but they're running out, particularly as expansion happens. And I think, without commenting on whether it's good or bad, that has a lot to do with league's decision to invite private equity in, because when assets are increasingly worth billions, you just don't have that many more Americans that are like, yeah, I can own 51% of that.
Yeah, but remember, the way LIV was started was, I assume, the Saudi government decided they wanted to either sports wash or start a league, depending on what your perspective is, and just offered an obscene amount of guaranteed money to the best golfers in the world. And that, it turns out, they could do that to any league if they really wanted to, right? And it ultimately is on the players to turn it down for whatever reason. And I have my own opinions about whether they should have turned the money down. Obviously, Rory McIlroy did. Tiger Woods could and did. But a lot of these players were like, I couldn't do it. I can't turn down generational wealth, guaranteed generational wealth for my family. And suddenly a league is born. And now suddenly it looks like in this merger, you're going to have a league owned, at least in part, by a foreign government. So I do agree with Pablo at some level that, like, it's going to be really hard to stop the richest, wealthiest nations in the world, Saudi being top of that list, from just doing this, and unless and until our players or the stars of the leagues can stand up against that. And I'm not sure the NBA can compete with the Saudi PIF. I'm not sure that the NFL can compete with them. And it'll be, we may actually be seeing that here in the next couple of years or decade or so. And that's a much bigger deal, I think, than golf in America. And it's going to potentially be a much bigger deal for American culture if and when it happens.
Yeah, it's a problem that extends well beyond sports, right? So, like, the context here is that when a lot of this LIV stuff was going on, the Saudi government was allegedly involved in dismembering a reporter who had affiliation with the Washington Post, right? And so that's not the kind of thing that we look kindly upon in this country.
Usually.
didn't. And it comes in the context of things like Daryl Morey criticizing China's human rights record in Hong Kong, and then basically having to twist himself into a pretzels to apologize. And then you have people who I have a lot of respect for, like Greg Popovich and Steve Kerr, are asked about Chinese human rights, and they're like, well, I haven't looked into it. They're like, it's almost like Susan Collins being asked about the latest Trump tweet, and you're like, makes me deeply uncomfortable. Like the idea that you could, like, these are people who have no problem criticizing our government, right? But somehow now we've gotten to the point where, and now maybe we can't criticize our government either here. But like, I don't love the fact that that these really important cultural institutions, which, as we've covered on this podcast, are often venues for activism, whether we like it or not, and are certainly places where people can make political statements, become another place for foreign adversaries and places that commit human rights abuses, can muzzle some of the most important figures in our society. I don't love that. It's not unique to sports, but I don't love it. Hollywood has the same problem. Some of our media companies have the same problem. Our business interests have the same problem. Elon Musk, for example, everything I said about Joseph Tsai could be said about Elon Musk and his relationship with China because of his Tesla factories there. This is a problem that extends well beyond sports. But because this podcast is about sports, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how much I have.
All right, something a little lighter, which is not about the Saudi royal family or anything like that. It's just there's a push here, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, there's a push to get rid of the Tush push. And I think who is it? Is it the Packers who are possibly bringing
that's the leak. The leak suggests it's the Packers who conveniently lost to the Eagles in the playoffs.
Yeah, but the weird thing is Sean McDermott came out today, the Bills coach, saying that he supports the Packers move, even though despite the atrocity that was the AFC Championship game, we normally are at the top of the NFL in terms of I think we're right behind the Eagles in terms of our percentage success rate on the Tush push. And McDermott said that he feels like it's an unsafe play, which I kind of trust. Like, if he's saying it, he has an interest in believing otherwise. So there must be something behind that.
Is that the argument? I missed I saw
that's what McDermott said.
Sorry. And what is the Packers argument, or at least apparently the Packers argument for outlawing it? Is it about player safety?
I don't know.
It's probably the only safe haven to really make a case against it. Right?
Yeah.
And I think even though nobody really has gotten hurt. I mean, you had Mahomes twist his knee when he tried it a couple of years ago, but to my recollection, there haven't been any major injuries with it, right? But you could just look at it and be like, this doesn't seem safe. These are massive people.
The center. Every time it happens, I think about the center. I'm like, that guy has got to be
the center, the quarterback who's being pushed on in two directions and then eventually piled on. It does seem unsafe. I will say, and I suppose I have a bias because the Chiefs lost to the Eagles, but that game was never really close enough for the Tush push to matter that much. My bias is just that it's boring to watch. Like, and the NFL has been, I think, the best sport at being responsive to moving quickly to improve the product on the field, and has not lagged the way certainly Major League Baseball has in terms of tradition getting in the way. And to a lesser, I mean, the NBA moves with some quickness about this kind of thing, but nobody moves like the NFL. And that's why I actually thought, I don't remember which game it was it was in the playoffs, and it was the game where, I forget which team was it that just kept jumping off sides to stop
Washington.
a Tush.
Yeah,
it was that. It was Washington.
The NFC Championship game.
Yeah. And I remember watching that, and finally when the referee had to come out and say, if they do it again, we're awarding the score to the Eagles. It was like I had two thoughts. One, this is really boring and is a great argument for getting rid of it. But the other thing is, gambling and fantasy sports have become such a big part of it. Then you had the question of, if this were to happen regularly, who do they award the score to? And then, right. And then that messes up all sorts of things. So I would be surprised if they don't get rid of it either this season or next season, because it doesn't make the game more interesting. It reminds me of like why they got rid of the shift in baseball. People just got tired of the lack of offense and finally had to say, like, you know what? It's boring to watch somebody hit a ball on the screws. What would always be a base hit, one hop liner to the right fielder, and it's caught by the third baseman who's playing shallow right, it's boring.
Here's why I think we're never going to see it again. And this is from ESPN's reporting. The Eagles are by far the biggest offenders in terms of using this. They use it more than twice as much as the team that uses it the third most, actually nearly twice as much as number 2, which is the Bills, right? And then like 3 times as much as the third most. And the Bills and the Eagles have the exact same success rate, 87%. Everybody else is in the low 70s. So if the Bills, who are the number 2 on that list and have the same success rate, are publicly coming out against this, everybody else is a victim of this play. So it's like, you got to imagine if there's even an iota of truth behind the safety concern, and maybe even if there wasn't, just for competitiveness reasons, everybody's going to get on board with this change.
I have to say, I'm a contrarian on this. If you stop it, the Chiefs did, or did they? Sorry to bring up old shit, Ravi, but
well, I don't know if that was a tush push play, was it?
I guess it was a tush
I'm
push.
sure it
was it just a regular run?
No, I mean it was a quarterback sneak. Whether you consider it a tush push, I don't know.
Yeah, but
that's not even the point. The point is, it's just boring. It's just like,
I agree. The reason to take it away isn't, player safety, I defer to the experts about football. Boring, I agree. But ultimately, is a quarterback sneak that much more exciting than a tush push or a fullback dive?
Anywhere near as often, because
that's true.
What makes it boring, it's not just that the play is boring to watch, it's that part of what is exciting about football is that to get a new set of downs, you got to make it 10 yards and functional. And that creates suspense. It creates suspense within the game. It creates suspense 50, 60 yards from the end zone, right? Yeah. But with the tush push, now you really only have to gain 7 yards or 8 yards in the first 3 downs, and then you know what's going to happen, and that creates less suspense.
Yeah.
And
it's the success rate of the play, and if I'm not mistaken, pushing or pulling was a relatively recently.
It's supposed to be against the
and
rules
then
anyway.
And then this was to be clear. I don't really care, honestly, but I do think that. Get a yard, man. Stop them. If you want to, if you don't want, if you don't like
televised, if the games weren't televised, I would agree. I mean, and I feel the same way about the shift in baseball, right? It's like, now that said, with baseball, I do think it's different because like people who watch baseball and say, just hit it the other way, don't understand that the ball is coming on the inside half of the plate at 100 miles an hour. You can't hit it the other way. That's, but with this, it's like, yeah, if
you're right.
If it were just me and my friends, for some reason in our 40s, putting on pads and playing, I'd say just stop them. But it's televised.
Yeah, you're making a product for television. You're making a product for entertainment. Sports are entertainment,
right?
And the tush push is only entertaining for Eagles fans. So the other 29.
I used to love it. I used to love it until I saw it stopped, and now I'm like, I don't even want to see it anymore.
Your quarterback is so big, you don't need anybody to push him. That's the thing. I think McDermott may be like, Josh Allen doesn't need anybody to push.
Well, okay. One more story here before we get to our deeper dive. After nearly 50 years, the New York Yankees have gotten rid of their ban on beards. Didn't even know this was a rule. Jason, I bet you did.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. You want me to just take it from here?
Yes.
The Yankees are an evil empire. Okay. we know this.
I don't dispute it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either.
The Yankees are an evil empire, and they demand that their players are stormtroopers. And I mean, this goes all the way back to there was, one of the most iconic Simpsons episodes is the softball episode where they, I think Mr. Burns gets all the Major League Baseball stars to come and play on his softball team for the power plant, and like Steinbrenner is there, or Burns is like in the Steinbrenner row, and he's yelling at Wade Boggs to, get rid of those sideburns, Boggs, and so and you look at there were things like. You just see these players who have these epic beards, and then they sign with the Yankees, and all of a sudden you're like, "Whoa, that's what their face looks like." And
Johnny Damon
was one of the more
immediate one that came to my mind too.
Yeah, and it's just this whole like old school Steinbrenner thing of, and it's also why if you look, it's most teams in baseball do things like They have their City Connect jerseys. They have their, because they're going to sell jerseys. The Yankees will usually do a different jersey, like for spring training. Like they'll have a all black jersey that says New York, but you will not see the Yankees in anything but the gray or the pinstripes. Like it's the whole thing. And it's like part of tradition. And I get that. Like when I was a kid, I was never really a Yankee fan, but I read a lot of books about like Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin and Roger Maris. And so I was really into those 50s and 60s Yankees teams. I thought they were really interesting. But this is just dumb. It's just like you no longer are in a position, and this is why they're getting rid of it, because you're no longer in a position as the Yankees to dominate everybody else in terms of free agent signings. The Dodgers have eclipsed you. You just lost Juan Soto after he was the best player you had in the playoffs and the World Series. You just lost him humiliatingly to the Mets, right? So right across town. And and then the Red Sox are spending money right now, and they realize like, oh, we're gonna have to make some changes in order to compete. That last season, like for the playoff run, they brought in Jazz Chisholm, and Jazz Chisholm did things like he wore a lot of bling, and he wore he broke the uniform policy. He wore like a turquoise belt with his uniform, and nobody cared. Nobody was like, this is terrible, except I guess the ownership. And so
I didn't expect to zag here. And for listeners, I'm a Yankee fan, but like I'm a Yankee fan in the way that I'm like a USA Hockey fan at this point. Like I secretly root for the Mets too. And I grew up a big Yankees fan, but the competitive equities of baseball really did me in. And a lot of the fact that we were just buying wins at a certain point just made it so much less fun to be into it. But there is something about the tradition, like, and it's why I was mad that they knocked down the old Yankee Stadium. They wouldn't knock down Fenway. So, like, I'd probably be more defensive of their old policy if they had the old Yankee Stadium and they really leaned into the tradition. And it was like going back in time, going back to Yankee Stadium. But now you got like this new fake stadium that looks like the old stadium with more luxury boxes and expensive seats, and we're buying our wins, and it's just, I don't know. Like, I want to defend it because I like the tradition. I like the idea of a tradition, but it's not like they've been consistent on this.
At this point, even the military is creating additional exemptions. There's, there are very few scenarios under which you can go without shaving in the military, but there are some. There's what's called the shaving profile. Like if you get really bad razor burn or ingrown hairs, they'll let you. And then there's some religious exemptions, but they are slowly expanding some of those exemptions for recruiting purposes. And the Yankees are going through the exact same thing, in my opinion, because if you're looking at it and you're going, it's a difference of a few $1 million on a $500 million thing. And I can go to this place and be whoever I want to be. And I can go to this, it's just one of many things.
Sports are often upstream of culture. This is one where it is the sports reacting to changes in the culture. Facial hair is accepted in the culture, in the culture now more. It is, being clean shaven is, with all due respect to present company, not necessarily the signifier of whatever it was when the Yankees originally had this policy in place, and they're just reacting to the fact that I think, Jason, you're 150% right. They want athletes like Jazz Chisholms of the world, for whom instead of it bling, it's facial hair is their thing. And if if going to the Mets allows them to wear facial hair, they might go to the Mets instead of come and be clean shaven. And that seems ridiculous, but it's not. I will say, on the flip side, I do like a tradition is still a good thing. And I love the fact that the Yankees honestly have not succumbed to the City Connect. I can't believe I just said love and Yankees in the same sentence. I despise them. 1996 World Series.
We don't really win anything anymore.
I'm still living the 96 World Series. I can't
won the American League.
It's a family-owned business. It's a little family-owned business.
All right, let's stop.
But I love the fact. I love the fact that the Yankees are a tradition-based and franchise. But this was an obvious way. Great, good, do your thing, change with the times, and they've done it.
They're also it will be a well-manicured beard, which is so funny. Let's play this clip of Johnny Damon, who you mentioned earlier, talking about this.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Johnny Damon here on a Virgin cruise, and it's been absolutely amazing. And I just heard that the Yankees are not requiring people to cut their hair, trim their beards, and you can always have your mustache, but I think we need to keep it how it was with respect to Yogi Berra, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Derek Jeter, and Mariano. Jorge Posada should be a Hall of Famer in my book. And the Yankees are a tradition.
Yeah, I'm with him. Yeah.
Okay. Also, as Philip pointed out, I mean, Johnny Damon is on a cruise and he is drunk. So we really don't know what his opinion is there.
Have you guys done a cruise, by the way? I haven't done a cruise since I was like 3 years old.
I've never done it.
I have, but it's been several years.
But this is what I would say. The tradition is the well manicured. The tradition is the uniforms. The tradition is the 20 whatever the hell World Series that they have at this point. The tradition is not short hair and bare face. Like that is so 20th century, and we are now a quarter of the way into this one. Like, let's just move on.
The Steinbrenner tradition is overpay for everything, make it about yourself, and put a little league fence in right field and get the best left-handed hitters you can. And stick with those traditions. You don't need the beard thing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, you should know. You guys have been paying off the refs over there in Kansas City for many years. You know what a strong return on investment looks like.
It's a non sequitur. It doesn't really.
All right. Well, let's go to our deep dive. So the question is, what is a sport, right? And there's this whole category of stuff out there now that is physical. It's competitive. Definitely involves athletic prowess and strategy. Sometimes team-oriented, sometimes individual-oriented. And we're talking about things like the Beast Games, which is this new show, 10-episode reality show, has contestants competing for $5 million. And, Jason, I know you said you watched it. We'll talk about that. Physical 100 is the show that I've watched. It's been 2 seasons on Netflix. It's based out of Korea. I'm sure it'll be coming here. Involves 100 of the best athletes in the country competing in a series of challenges, some cases as individuals, some cases as teams. And then you've got Survivor, obviously, which has been around now for 48 seasons.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Wow. And then you've got shows like Outlast, which is a favorite of mine, which they drop a bunch of people in Alaska and have them form teams. That's a great show. Love that show. It's had 2 seasons. Are these sports?
No, but that doesn't mean, I mean, I don't know. First of all, we should define sport. Because to me, there's 2 different categories here. There's sport and then there's games, right? So to me, poker, obviously not a sport, but it's a game. Doesn't.
Can I read you the definition? Because it's going to make it harder for you if I read the definition. So an activity.
Are you going to like Merriam-Webster here, or?
Yeah, this is Oxford. Okay. An activity involving physical exertion, okay, check, and skill, check, in which an individual, check, or team, check, competes against another or others, check, for entertainment, check. Sports. These are sports.
Okay.
According to that definition.
So poker's out. Then
physical exertion.
We watched the Beast Games as a family. True, he's 11. He watches Mr. Beast videos, and I catch him occasionally when I'm with him, and Diana watches him with him sometimes. And so he was like, let's watch this. And we were like, all right. And so like True and I watched a couple episodes, and I was like, this is amazing. And so it became, and like everybody, even 4-year-old Bella, we were all just sitting on the couch.
What kind of stuff were they watching?
In the show, there are some physical competitions. Like there's a thing where they had to team up and like pull a monster truck a certain distance, and it's all like you get eliminated from the game.
Is it co-ed?
It's co-ed. And it's like definitely not like, oh, these people are all athletic. I mean, it wasn't like that at all, because a large, I would say 60-70% of it is strategy, and then like there was another thing that was like trivia, and then there's a lot of alliances a la Survivor and that kind of thing. There's all that kind of stuff. So to me, the Beast Games is not a sport. There are athletic aspects to it, To me, it's a game. But then people will argue like whether or not NASCAR is a sport, whether or not golf is a sport versus a game. I
Yeah.
would argue that both are because of
There's
not just
physical exertion.
yeah, especially like anybody who argues that golf is not a sport
Has never
is-
walked
well,
80
they've
holes.
only, yeah, they've never walked. They've only played it in in a golf cart.
Well, okay, under this definition, then physical 100 is definitely a sport then, because it's
But I
all
think
physical exertion.
There's
competitive.
one other thing that I think is relevant to what we would probably as Americans consider a sport, and that is that it has to be fundamentally the same and repeatable over and over again, season to season.
That
Which
is
is
a
why
good
I was
addition.
thinking like
a good
Survivor is kind of a sport in that sense, because like it is fundamentally the same game over and over again. Although the way you win is by voting and expression of your physical strength or ability. But like the thing that and the other piece I would say less important than the repeatability of it is like spectator is usually the word that precedes sport.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Like,
good point.
can you imagine yourself watching whatever? I guess we do watch poker. But that's the physical place. But there's some level of like the survivors of the world where it's like you couldn't actually like watch Survivor as like as a form of entertainment live. You watch it on television, it's episodic, etc. So those are the two things that, again, those aren't in the Merriam or the Oxford definition, but like the fact that you can do, bowling or golf or these sort of what are considered darts, borderline sports, at least it's like the same game, no matter where you play it in the world, no matter what. And these other things are a little different every time. And that I think gives it a little bit of it's why we tweak a little bit when you say something like physical 100 is a sport.
I think that's a great point, and it means to me that the way to define it is okay. Like I watched the Beast Games, but would I watch them live? Like, would I go and I would not go and sit in bleachers and wait for 3-4 hours while they changed the set. I would not, and it wouldn't be interesting because watching it live, I wouldn't be able to hear what everybody's saying to each other. And I think the biggest measure is the thing that you watch heavily edited? Because the Beast Games it's unscripted television. It is heavily edited. They are now, I don't think that they're rigging the game, but they are choosing which characters in the game we're going to follow as part of the story, because they start preparing the product for television or for streaming after the results, right? And so that to me would eliminate the Beast Games as a sport, combined with the fact that it's not like you can be a professional Beast gamer. You're not going to go back and do it again.
A lot of these are one timers. That's a good addition
right,
to the rules.
which makes them an event, but not necessarily a sport. But
it's what's different than the CrossFit Games or something, right? Because
Right.
even though they do change some of the events, like the events are always a little different in something like the CrossFit Games. The same people compete every year in the same competitions.
But I think it would be more sport-like if at least some of it were the same. Do you remember American Gladiators?
oh,
Yeah,
the show.
great,
One of my
documentary?
favorite
great
shows.
Netflix docuseries.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's so good. It's
Oh, I haven't
so
watched it. Oh,
good.
okay.
You
Oh,
gotta
yeah.
watch it.
I loved that shit when I was
It's
growing up.
just as trashy as you think. And
Oh,
it's
good.
wonderful.
But one of the things I loved about American Gladiators is while the events were different, the last event, I don't even remember what it was called, was always the same.
The
Gauntlet or something.
Eliminator,
The
yeah,
Eliminator
yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if the CrossFit Games, maybe it is like that. I don't watch it. Where like if the last event is always the same, or like some events are the same and some events are different.
Those
it
people
gets
were
more
doing it
towards-
when you watch the documentary. They're doing it multiple times a day
It's
because they would film it like in bunches. So like the Gladiators, it was like these guys were concussed and stuff, and
with like
gals.
no health insurance,
All
no
on
medical.
Oh man, I gotta watch this.
Yeah.
I love that show. Anyway,
Yeah,
but
it's rough. It's rough.
I'm sure it was. Yeah, that joust. I'm sure there were some concussions with that. But I like the idea. I mean, we're coming up with the definition in real time here, but it's like repeatable, live, something that's not edited. I really like that twist. Like there's something about basketball that, track and field, which to me is like the ultimate sport, which is like, can you go faster? Can you jump higher? You can measure it. It's measurable, right? Is the other thing, which is
although it is
where
a
Survivor.
like what makes a good sport is a different question. And I think track and field is almost too simple. It's like you run from here to there. so it doesn't involve. I mean, there is strategy, I'm sure, but it's not discernible.
You're
to
not
the
going to see a different thing every time you
Yeah.
go to watch to go watch a track meet. You're not going to be like, I wonder what we'll see today. You're going to see
Yeah.
people run fast, jump high, throw a ball far, throw a jab,
Yeah.
and some of them will throw it farther than others. Whereas like you can go to a basketball game, you can go to football, you'd be like, I've never seen that happen before. But what I think all this gets at is like the in a world where things are increasingly either tied up in something too weighty or upsetting because it's popular culture and politics and everything are merging so closely, or in the advent of AI, you're not sure what's real. For me, the success of these, what are basically unscripted television competitions, they will be successful the more real that they can be. So watching the Beast Games, my, sort of antenna was up after having, watched reality television for years and then having participated in a few documentaries as a subject and understanding, that sometimes what's happening is the producers are going, I know we didn't catch this moment live. Can you sort of reenact this? We know what really happened, all that. So you become aware of those things. And my antenna is up the whole time being like, okay, some of this is contrived. And there was a little, like, there's moments where they're like, hey, you two go talk to each other, but I didn't get the sense that there was anything about the competition that was rigged or contrived or anything like that. And that to me will be the measure of success for these sort of hybrid sport-like programs, is if you get even a sense that it is not on the level. I think people are going to tune out because that's what they're looking for when they're looking for sports in a world where so little is real.
Yeah. Well, I think we dispensed with this. I think
so. I think we came in under our usual time.
Yes.
A lot. So, all right.
I'm going to go watch the Beast Games with my extra.
Yeah.
No, finished quarter gold first.
Okay.
We can do amateur athlete corner if y'all have anything.
Oh, I got something. something.
What do you got?
I don't know if you guys know I'm black, but I went. Yeah, I know it's crazy. I
Audio
went
listeners
skiing
right now are like,
for
a
the-
guy
I know,
named Batistu.
sure.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it. The name. I thought it was. I went skiing this past week.
Okay.
Which is
First time ever?
Not first time ever. I've been maybe a dozen times. Maybe 20 times over the course. I didn't go for the first time until I was 28 years old. Well, I live in California, relatively close to Tahoe and what have you. So,
once in my life,
it's happened. But I went for the first, I'll never forget it. The first time I went was right after the 2009 election. I was 28 years old. Only black guy probably within a very long radius, but I went skiing again for the first time. I tore my ACL a few years ago. So it's only, I think, the second time I've gone since I tore my ACL, and I did not hurt myself, guys. That is actually my amateur.
Congratulations.
I am.
Are you going to
large
ski
man.
when we're in Colorado in a couple of weeks?
I am going to ski. I'm going in Colorado to Colorado with Ravi in a couple of weeks. And I'm going to ski again. So 2 times in a month after 0 times in my first 28 years. But yes, black people can ski. I saw like 3 others on the mountain. So I was like, every time I saw them, we gave them the old like sup. Like, we did it. We made it, guys. But most importantly, with my 44-year-old broken body, I did not get injured. So I'm calling that an athletic victory.
Yeah,
for your
that
boy.
is. Ravi, do you ski?
No. Like you, I did it once when I was on my high school ski trip when I was in high school, and that was it.
You're not going to go in Colorado?
No, I'm a big what they call après ski or whatever. Everybody goes and I read my books and write my books, and Adisu's been on vacation with me long enough to know I am strategically a loner. Yeah, like yes. I'll be like, all right, where's the time where, like, almost like a candidate, all the people are in the same room, so I can make the appearance of having been there, and then I go off when there are times where people won't notice me being gone, like when they're skiing, and that's when I'm like, okay, I could steal 5 hours today, and nobody will get mad at me for not doing the group activity. So that's how
is Ravi's
fully unsurprising. That is so unsurprising.
I'm in New Orleans, where I think your bachelor party was, Adisu, and I checked into a different hotel than the bachelor party because I didn't want to have the pressure of everybody telling me to come out.
So Ravi will not be skiing, but I will report back in March about whether I
don't get hurt
2 times without another ACL tear or something.
Because it's like one of the main ways to re-injure it, right? Because that's That's one of my reasons for. So I went skiing when I was like 17. It barely counts as skiing. It was here in the Kansas City area, at a place called Snow Creek. It's like fake snow and a really big hill, but it's like a ski place here. And then I tore my ACL in college, and I just never. I was like, I don't want to do that again. So I was like, I
like it. It's a
bad
good.
enough.
First of all, it's a good workout, and also my number one piece of advice to myself and anybody else who hasn't skied in a while: don't be a hero. Like,
yeah, take it easy.
Go down the blues, go down the greens. Like, you don't try to pretend like you're
like too.
90%
of it is just avoiding like the dangerous.
Avoid danger, right? And so I have no shame in just taking my time down green, easy runs and enjoying myself in nature. So I'm going to try to do that again in a couple of weeks. But if I show up on here with a knee brace or crutches or whatever, you'll know why.
Well, my big thing I have coming up is as you all know, I play, old man amateur baseball. So like still baseball, not softball. And this week it's finally warm here in Kansas City. It was just a really harsh winter, and it's finally like in the 60s, 50s, and which is so like my mental health has just skyrocketed this week. And this weekend I go to Vegas. I play a bunch of baseball over the summer in Kansas City every year. And then there's a tournament at the beginning of the summer or beginning of the spring, and a tournament at the end that I do travel to play in. And so I'll be in Vegas playing over the weekend. And actually the team I usually play with didn't go. So I just like signed up as a free agent, and a team picked me up, and I'm playing with these guys from Elkhart, Indiana. And
Nice.
and so I'm like going to get there and get my Airbnb with 3 of these other dudes I've never met, and then go play baseball all day and we play in the over 40 division, and there's like a fair amount of guys who played pro. So you have to work pretty. So like I went out it was like Kansas City is so schizophrenic when it comes to weather this time of year that on let's see, Saturday, there was still a blanket of snow on the ground, and I woke up to like 14-degree temperatures. And on Sunday, it was 55, 60 degrees. And I had a buddy hitting me fly balls. So, because I hadn't taken a fly ball in 4 months, I'm an outfielder, and it was just felt amazing. So,
Are you going to play
that
outfield?
time of year, man? Where
yeah,
every day.
Are you going to play outfield?
Yeah, I usually play center field, but this team said that their center fielder played like he was a center fielder in like AA. So I was like,
it's Johnny Damon.
Yeah, probably. So
well, I don't know. Given the state of Johnny Damon in that video, I'm not sure you want him on your team.
Yeah. So I'll be playing right or left, I guess. Anyway, I'm excited. It feels like we made it through Kansas City January and February, so I'm super excited.
Yeah, you guys are in the middle of the country, so it's like the weather turns. Like down here in New Orleans is like that too. It was like cold last week, and it's basically gonna be warm from here on out at this point. Yeah,
I'm so ready for
I'm ready. Yeah. I am ready. And Jason, I'm ready for baseball season. I got to say, April, I like April, and then wake me up when it's September, but I'm ready for baseball season. It also just signifies the changing of the weather.
I want to get into baseball. Am I allowed to switch to the Mets?
Like,
is that
100%? You should.
I've never
switched well of your character.
I
when I meet people like my cousin, my cousin Robbie, he's from New York and he's a Yankees fan. I'm like, that's fine. You grew up in New York. It's like, I don't blame you it's when I meet Yankees fans who are not from there, who I'm just like, I know everything I need to know about you now.
Yeah.
But when I meet New Yorkers who are Mets fans, I have so much respect for that. I'm like, you chose the harder way.
But I'm choosing it when it's easier.
That's fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's easier right now, but you know what? It's not, because they're still the Mets. They can still find a way to Met the thing. And the Yankees don't do that. The Yankees in the last 33 years have had one season where they didn't win more games than they lost. I think maybe 2 seasons. The Mets, they do that all the time. So, but yeah, like it is a little weak to go be a Mets fan when they just got Soto and but do it. Be a Mets fan.
Yeah, please.
All right, cool. I'll do it. I just want to be our buddy Jamie Hodari, who showed up to the Detroit Lions game with Bill's shirt and a Lions hat on. And I'm just like, that's crazy.
Sports bigamy is a crime.
Don't do that thing. Wasn't it Giuliani who wore like in the Subway series, wore like a Mets and a Yankees? Did Hillary do it too? Anyway, we are at some point going to do a whole episode on just politicians and sports and the errors they make. So my favorite, by the way, ever is I don't know his favorite ever. It's one of my favorites is when Rob Lowe went to the Super Bowl and he was wearing a hat that had an NFL logo.
I love it.
Not even a politician. It's just like, come on, man. It's like, I like sport ball. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Please go and give us a review. Please tell your friends about this if you enjoyed it. And again, sports actually matter quite a lot. Thanks.